In this video, we'll look at how you can deploy an end-to-end MLOps pipeline using Kubeflow. The data scientist will first log in using single sign-on. In this case, you're logging in with Okta. And once they are logged in, they'll be presented with a dashboard. In the dashboard, the user now is going to create a notebook. They click on notebook, and in this example, we're gonna pick a notebook with an image that has the SciPy container. We're gonna leave the CPU, we're gonna update the CPU to one core, and then we're gonna attach in the advanced options, we're gonna allow access to Kubeflow pipelines, and this is because we'll be generating pipelines in our notebook. It'll take a few minutes for the notebook to spawn and launch, and once we connect to our notebook, let's now go in and upload our example Python notebook into our notebook console, and then let's generate the pipeline from the code that we just had. Feel free to update the specifics of the inside the pipeline if required. Now, as you can see here, there's a YAML file that's been generated called demopipeline.yaml. This is our pipeline. Now we're going to load this pipeline in, and we're going to run a training pipeline. Let's try and do that. Go to pipelines, upload pipeline, and upload your YAML file. But of course, we're going to first give it a name. Then we're going to upload a file, our YAML file. And then we're going to create the pipeline. And now we're going to run a new experiment. So we're going to create an experiment based on the pipeline that we had. So click on create experiment, give it a name. And then we're going to run an experiment. So we're going to give it a we're going to select the pipeline. In our case, the pipeline we had just created. We're going to pick that. We're going to run that pipeline in our run. And let's we got to specify a data path. This is kind of where we would be storing the data between the various stages of the pipeline. We're going to set /data, and we're going to run this. Now, running a pipeline can take a few minutes depending on what the various stages in the pipeline is doing. In this particular case, we are downloading the data, preparing it, we're doing a train and split, then we're doing a classification, and then we are creating a model. And now let's look at the model that got logged in our registry. So just click on MLflow, and that'll open our integrated model registry. And under our experiment called new exp, which is the name of our experiment, let's click on the latest run and the latest thing called Enchanting Crow 47 here. As you can see here, this was the model that was just loaded after we created in our pipeline. Okay, so now our pipeline is actually completed running, and the last stage of the pipeline was actually creating an inference endpoint as well. So click on endpoint, and this will load up the endpoint details, and just copy the URL for that. And this will be available and accessible by applications that get deployed there. Now what we're going to do is update our internal URL in our file, in our config file, and we are going to get the domain for that set up, and we're going to copy that so that we can access it from our application. And now we are going to go deploy an ML enabled application. And for that, we were going to first start with a namespace. In a platform team might have created a namespace for the data scientist or the ML engineer. In this case, we're going to create it using Rafay. And let's just take a few seconds to create a namespace on the same cluster. And in a few seconds, the namespace is ready. Now let's go deploy our test application. This is a simple test application, which is going to perform inference using the inference endpoint that we just created in our pipeline. So we're going to create that. We're going to choose that file. It's a simple YAML file in this case. And let's go look at what this file looks like. As you can see here, we had updated that endpoint in our YAML file, and we're going to copy that in for the inference URI, and we're going to deploy our application. And as we deploy this, it can take a couple of minutes for the container images to get downloaded and the application to become operational on the cluster. And when we go into we're going to get the load balancer where it's going to listen. The application is going to listen. We're going to get the IP address for that. The external IP is copy that. And now, as a user of the ML enabled application, let's go to our web browser and let's hit that particular IP. And as you can see here, our application, the iris predictor, which is kind of the core theme of our application. And let's go pick something and let's do a prediction. And in this case, the application is actually using the inference endpoint and it's predicted that it's a certain kind of an iris flower. So there you have it, our end-to-end MLOps pipeline created using Rafay.